Hello everyone, it's Mafalda and welcome back to my channel. So as you can see by the title of this video, this is probably going to be hopefully the first of many recent reads videos on this channel. This is something that I've been meaning to start for a long time now. I wanted to start doing these videos to share a little bit more of what I've thought about the books that I've been reading lately, and I actually thought of reviewing all of the books that I've read this year so far, but I think that video would just be too long. So I'm just gonna stick to a select few because honestly, there are some books that I've read this year that I just don't really have a lot of things to say about. So I'm just gonna skip those and actually talk about the books that I want to talk about, and not necessarily only books that I loved this year, but also books that I thought were mediocre. And yeah, I just wanted to share my thoughts on books. So I guess let's get started. I will try to make this as short as possible, and I will be talking about 8 of the 21 books that I've read so far this year when I'm filming this. So yeah, let's get started. So the first book that I wanted to share is actually my first read of 2023. I started the year with a bang. I started it with a 5-star, and it was just the best way to start this reading year. And yeah, that is The Mothers by Britt Bennett. I have read The Vanishing Half, I don't know if it was last year, I think it was 2 years ago, and I really liked it. So obviously I wanted to try Britt Bennett's debut novel. I think this is her debut novel, and yeah, I just wasn't disappointed at all. It was easily a 5-star. I read this so quickly. And this book is set in Southern California in a Black community, and it follows our main character Nadia, who is 17 years old, and she just lost her mother to suicide. And in that turmoil of losing her mother and finishing high school and all that, she meets this boy called Luke, who is 21 years old, and he was a former football star, but he had a severe injury, so he had to stop playing. And he's also the local pastor's son. And they start getting involved, Nadia and Luke, and suddenly Nadia falls pregnant because they're so young, and also because Luke is a pastor's son, and a lot of complications. They decide to cover up the pregnancy, and I don't think this is a spoiler because this is the first chapter, and it also kind of alludes to that in the synopsis, but Nadia ends up having an abortion. And basically the rest of the book is just following Nadia and Luke as they grow older and as they kind of deal with this situation of what if they had kept the baby and they stayed a couple and all that. And also at the same time, Nadia's best friend Aubrey kind of gets turned into this kind of a love triangle situation. This is just a beautiful and powerful story. I love Britt Bennett's writing. It's just so easy to read. It's kind of almost addicting. Honestly, I just couldn't stop reading this book, and it is just beautiful book about the decisions that you make in life and how they impact the rest of your life. And yeah, it's just beautiful. I love this. This was 5 stars easily. And honestly, Britt Bennett just does not miss. I've had 2 5-stars with her, and honestly, I'm just excited to read what she writes next. So yeah, that was my first read of 2023. Started out on a great note, and yeah, just kind of set the tone for the rest of the year. The next book that I want to talk about is A Heart in the Body in the World by Deb Caletti. I've had this book on my TBR for a long time now, so I just decided to read it, I think in January as well. I'm kind of going through chronological order with all of these books. This book starts with our main character Annabelle, who has just witnessed a traumatic event in her life. We don't really know at the start of the book what it is, but we know that she's going through a lot and she's depressed, and so to kind of like process that trauma, she decides to run from Seattle to Washington, D.C. to kind of clear her head and also to kind of just process everything that happened and maybe get some closure. And she starts that journey with her grandpa, who has an RV, and goes along on the journey with her, but also the support of her best friends and also her brother, who are back home and cheering her on. And basically she starts going on that journey, just running basically across the country, and she starts getting a lot of media attention because of that. And so this is kind of a cross-country road trip trip book where we follow this girl who is not well, trying to find peace in her life and trying to find some closure to what happened to her. I think I heard about this book in some kind of list that was like the best hard-hitting YA contemporary books, and I love those kinds of books. Honestly, maybe they're not like my preferred type anymore. There was a point where that was like my preferred genre, but I still really like those books. So I decided to give this one a try because I had never heard it apart from that list. And when I checked Goodreads, it had amazing reviews. Everyone was giving it 5 stars. And I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, which is a good rating. It's not bad, but I just was maybe expecting a little bit more from this book. I think I was expecting this to pack a little bit more of a punch at the end. Halfway through the book, I already knew what kind of happened to the main character. So at the end, when it was revealed, I was kind of like, okay, kind of saw it coming, you know? So I wasn't surprised by that. Maybe a lot of people were surprised by the event that happened. Overall, I just had really high expectations for this book because the reviews were amazing. Like, it has a really high rating on Goodreads, and I just was left at the end kind of feeling unsatisfied, I guess. It was just an okay book for me. I was expecting this book to hit a lot harder than it did. And yeah, I guess that was it. It was still an enjoyable read. I had a good time with it, but it was just a middle of the road 3-star for me. And yeah, I was kind of disappointed by that, honestly. Then the next book that I would like to talk about, I actually listened on audiobook, and it is Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson. And I've been meaning to read this book for so long because it is Tiffany D. Jackson's debut novel, and I've read most of her work and I really loved a lot of her books, so I was really excited to start this one, honestly. So I grabbed the audiobook, and honestly the audiobook was a great experience. And this book is about Mary B. Addison, who is currently 16 years old, but when she was 9 years old, she was convicted of killing a 6-year-old girl who she was taking care of with her mother, who is very religious. Allegedly, Mary was the one that killed this white baby when she was taking care of her. And basically she spends her life in baby jail. Then she moves to a group home when she's 15 or 16. And in that group home, she meets a boy while on an assignment in a nursing home, and she falls pregnant. And basically it's about her not only trying to prove her innocence in that case of killing that white girl, but also trying to keep her baby, because obviously a young girl who is convicted of killing a baby wouldn't be likely safe with another baby in her hands. So she's trying to prove her innocence against her mother, who basically accused her of killing the baby. So this is a very interesting book, and I think I will mildly speak of spoilers. So if you haven't read this book and you don't want to be spoiled, skip ahead. I will put like the timestamp where you can skip to, because maybe I will hint at some things and I don't want you guys to be spoiled, so skip ahead now. So this is a very interesting book. I was really loving it. Honestly, it was going to be a 5-star up until that ending, and I'm glad I wasn't the only one, because then I went on Goodreads and everyone was talking about that ending. I honestly had to re-listen to the last chapter a few times to really understand what I was listening to, because honestly the whole book is set up in a way that you just don't think of that happening. And then at the end, it's just kind of, honestly, it's a really good plot twist. It was an amazing plot twist. And I gotta give like props to Tiffany D. Jackson for making that, and it just kind of leaves you hanging at the end, kind of like, what the fuck? Honestly, that was my impression, and that's why I had to re-listen so many times, because I was just like, no, this did not happen. But yeah, it was really surprising because of that, but also not surprising in the best way, because I was rooting for Mary. I was rooting for Mary the whole book, and then at the end I was just kind of like, do I trust her? Do I not trust her? And I never really like unreliable narrators, so it was really tricky for me, because like the book was a 5-star up until that ending, and then at the end I was just like questioning my whole like experience with the book. So that's good, but also not like I keep flip-flopping with this book because it just made me feel a lot, and I was just rooting for this character, and then that thing happened, and when I was just like, what do I do now with this information? But yeah, it was a really well-constructed book because of that, so I gotta give props. And overall, I did enjoy the book. I think I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars because it was a 5-star up until that point at the very end. So yeah, I think I did like it, but at the same time I feel betrayed, you know? But yeah, it was a good experience. Tiffany D. Jackson does not miss, honestly. Even like the books that I gave 3 stars to from her, I just still really loved the experience of reading them. I don't know, it's just her writing is amazing. And yeah, this was a great debut novel. I'm glad I finally read it, and yeah, it just fooled me, I guess. The next book that I would like to talk about is The Memory Police by Yoko Agawa. I have been meaning to read this one for a few years now. Finally got it. And this is a dystopian science fiction book, which I haven't been reading a lot from, honestly. And it follows this society where there exists a memory police, which is basically a group of people who ensures that things are forgotten, I guess, and erased from the world. And society is not really consciously aware that this is happening, that things are disappearing. Basically, one day they just wake up and maybe TV is no longer a thing, or books are no longer a thing. And it's just like gradually things start to disappear, basically. And this book follows a young woman who is a writer, and she's kind of struggling in her career. And one day she realizes that maybe her editor is in danger of being persecuted by the memory police and being erased from the world, because that can happen. And so she makes a plan to hide her editor in her home, but like below her house. She makes like a little like refuge place for him to hide. And yeah, it's just a really interesting concept, like honestly fascinating concept. I don't know how someone would think of this idea, but honestly the execution of this book was just kind of lacking for me. Maybe this is just not the genre for me, because I just kept having unanswered questions throughout this whole book. In this kind of book, I just feel like I need everything to be explained to me, because I just don't like to have unanswered questions in my mind. I don't like for there to be like open, loose ends for me to like question, I guess. I just really didn't like that there wasn't a lot of explanation about why things were happening the way they were and why this was happening in this world. And that bugged me throughout the whole book. I was just like, but why is this disappearing? Like, why are books disappearing? Why this and why that? And I just didn't have those answers. So if you're okay with having unanswered questions at the end of the book, this is the book for you. But it really bugged me, to be honest. I just wanted everything to be explained and everything to have a concrete reason for why it was happening, and I just didn't have that with this book. But nevertheless, this was such an interesting concept, and I really just didn't like how some things were executed. But yeah, other than that, I think I gave this one either a 3 or a 3.5 out of 5 stars, which is a good rating for me. So yeah. The next book that I would like to talk about is A Mind Spread Out on the Ground by Alicia Elliott. And this is a nonfiction memoir about Alicia Elliott's life told in essays. And it is about her growing up as a Native American. And this book discusses a wide range of topics from trauma, racism, family, love, legacy, oppression, just everything, honestly. And through a Native American lens, obviously, because the author is Native American. And I just thought this was such an interesting book. I feel like I've been reading a lot of Native American centric books, but either fiction or non-fiction where it's just like very textbook-like, you know? And I love memoirs. I've always loved memoirs, and this was just the perfect memoir about being Native American and about Alicia Elliott's experience, and it was just so interesting to learn more about Native experiences. And I had seen this book online somewhere, but honestly I feel like not a lot of people have read this, so I kind of wanted to talk about this book to kind of make you all read it because it was great. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. It's a great memoir. The only thing that bugged me about this book is that the essays weren't like technically in a chronological order. So sometimes Alicia would speak about, at the beginning of the book, she was speaking about things that would happen later in her life, and I just kind of wish it stayed on a more chronological order of the events that happened in her life. I really like that sort of structure in a story, so especially when it's a memoir. So it kind of bugged me that it didn't really follow that. So yeah, that was pretty much the only thing that bugged me about this book, and it was very minor. I listened to this one on audiobook and the audiobook was great. And yeah, I just really like this book and I wanted more people to read it, so now I'm talking about it here. So hopefully you guys pick it up. It's a great memoir, and yeah, that's it. And the next book that I would like to talk about is another nonfiction book, and it is Butts, a Backstory by Heather Radke. And just like the title suggests, this is a book about butts. That is it, plain and simple. It is a book about the history and the cultural impact that butts have had in our society and throughout history. And it is just so, it is such a niche topic, honestly. It is so, like, why would you make a book about butts? But the book was just so fascinating and I was just gripped from the beginning. I learned so much about different people in history. And honestly, I was kind of looking for a nonfiction book because I've been struggling a lot with body image. I've been struggling my whole life, but lately it has been really up there in my anxiety list. And so I was looking for a book that maybe would calm my anxieties about body image. And I actually started, before this one, I started a book on exercise, and it was making it worse. Like, I was just, oh my god, I'm gonna exercise my whole body away. But yeah, then I stumbled upon this book on Script, and it just felt like such a silly book, honestly. But I started listening to it, and I can't really explain it, but it kind of healed my relationship with my butt personally. In a way, just a small way, because I'm still working on it, obviously. But it was just so healing to learn about the history of this body part that hasn't been my favorite throughout my life. And just the fact that so many people have struggled with it. And yeah, it was just a really fascinating story, to be honest, to just listen to how butts have been perceived throughout history and how they've been kind of shamed, but also celebrated and just objectified. There has been such a tumultuous history with butts that I was just like, why do I give so many craps about my butt? Like, who cares? Honestly, by the end of the book, I was just like, yeah. It was a super interesting book. I learned so much about something that I didn't really want to learn, I guess. But yeah, it was just unexpectedly good. And it was also kind of healing for me in a way. I'm still working on it, obviously, but it was just nice to know that I'm not the only one. I ended up giving this one 4.5 out of 5 stars because honestly, I just wasn't expecting to have such a good time with a book about butts, but I did. So yeah. The next book that I would like to talk about is Burnt Sugar by Avni Doshi, and this book follows a complicated relationship between a mother and a daughter. The mother is called Tara, and when she was young, she was kind of like wild, and she had just kind of a wild life, I guess. And all of this with her kid with her, Antara. And when they get older, Tara starts forgetting things, she starts experiencing dementia, and so Antara steps up as her daughter and starts to take care of her. But at the same time, Antara doesn't really want to take care of her mother, who has never really taken care of her when she was younger. So yeah, there's kind of like this love-hate relationship between this mother and daughter duo, and it's just following them as they try to untangle all of these feelings of love and hate. And I just love complicated relationships between a family, especially between a mother and a daughter. That's just right up my alley. So I knew I was going to really like this book. And the writing in this book was just honestly amazing. I want to see what Avni Doshi writes next because I just loved her writing, and it was probably my favorite thing about the book. I feel like this book is very unique in a way that it tells the story of this mother and this daughter. And so because of that, I feel like the reviews of this book are very mixed. But thankfully, I am on the spectrum of people who really loved this book. I just thought it was beautiful and impactful, and I just loved learning about this relationship, and I saw a lot of myself in Antara, and the writing was beautiful. I had some issues with the plot of the story because it kind of didn't really have a specific plot. It was just kind of following them and then flashbacks to them when they were younger, and it didn't really have a story other than this mother has dementia and her daughter is helping her. That was the whole plot of the book. So maybe I would have liked a little bit more, but at the same time I like that this book is short and sweet and goes straight to the point. And also at the same time I feel like there were some characters that were introduced to us that weren't really explored and were just there to be there. And yeah, I kind of maybe would take those characters out and include more plots and maybe explain some things a little bit more. But other than that, I really like the book and I highly recommend it. And the last book that I would like to talk about today is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I've been really hesitant to pick up a Dolly Alderton book in the past few years since she became a really big thing, because honestly I just was scared of not liking her books. So I decided to start with her memoir. I feel like I love memoirs, like I said before, so I just wanted to get a feel for her and maybe then I can move on to some of her fiction work. And this was, I guess, okay to me. This is obviously a book about love. That's what I was expecting going into it. But what really surprised me in a positive way is that this book focuses a lot more on female friendships and that kind of love other than romantic love, I guess. Just kind of like the power of female friendships and also family love. And I was going into this book thinking it was just going to be a book about her relationships, romantic relationships in the past, but no, it was more focused on her friends and how much love they have given her throughout the years and what she would be without that kind of love in her life. And that's what I loved the most about this book, definitely. It was just really refreshing that that was the kind of love that Dolly Alderton decided to explore more in this book. It was just really nice to see that. But the thing that kind of bothered me about this book is that Dolly Alderton's comedy type is just not for me at all. Maybe it's the fact that she's a millennial. I don't know. I get along with millennials, so maybe that's not it. But it's just her type of comedy throughout this book. The little like in between chapter things that she did that were trying to be funny, they were not funny at all. I just really struggled with that, which makes me think that maybe I will also struggle with her fiction work. Hopefully I won't, because I really want to give Ghosts a try. But yeah, that was just not my favorite thing ever, which is fair, honestly, because everyone has a different type of comedy, you know? And yeah, I just kind of cringed at her comedy, but it's fine. I still loved other parts of the book, like I was saying. So yeah, this was a 3 out of 5 stars for me, which is surprising for a memoir. Honestly, my enjoyment of the book was also kind of affected by the fact that everyone raves about this book, so I was just kind of expecting a little bit more. So yeah, that's why I didn't give it a higher rating, but it is what it is. And that concludes these little, maybe hopefully short reviews of books that I've read this year, of 8 of the books that I've read this year, some that I loved, some that I just wasn't a fan of, but I still enjoyed. And yeah, I guess that's it for me. I will also leave down below the link to our book club's live show, the 20-something book club and the nonfiction baddies book club that I host with Casey from Casey Can Read. I will leave our live shows below because we do discuss tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow open water and also refusing compulsory sexuality in those live shows. If you want to know our thoughts, it will be in the live shows. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you on my next one. Bye!